in conventional medicine, what are they doing? Like how are they treating cardiovascular issues? How are they looking at people when it comes to heart health?
Well, yeah, and the life expectancy in the United States is like late 70s for men, maybe 77, 78, depending on the year, maybe 80 years of age for women. And that's clearly not good enough.
Yeah.
It's not the way that it should be. And they're not only are they only lasting until that age in modern medicine, the modern medical world, but they're not thriving. They're
Mm.
just surviving. They're limping across that finish line. And you see that the last several years of life are often spent in and out of hospitals, certainly in and out of doctors' offices. And that's just not the way that it should be. The medical model, with their foundation of pharmaceuticals and surgeries, is a failure. And it was designed by people who only had their financial interests at best at heart. And that's when you look at things through that lens of how they're trying to push the pharma, how they brainwash the medical doctors into the pharmaceutical surgical model, you can just see the failures. But ultimately, 80 years is not good enough for me. My father died when he was 63 of a Parkinson's-like illness called progressive supranuclear palsy. And the Mayo Clinic had no idea why my father was sick and dying. And to tell my backstory is that I met a young woman who was a 29-year-old doctor of chiropractic, and she told me all the reasons why my father is sick and dying. And I listened, I changed, and now bring the message of natural heart health and longevity to the world.
Yeah. So, Kean, your father was a medical doctor as well, and a lot of medical doctors, unfortunately, are dying early. They should be the ones leading when it comes to health, right? They should be the ones living and having great lifespan and health span, right? And you were talking about that lifespan. Our lifespan is a certain amount, 78, 79 years or whatever, but the health span is typically like 55, right? After 55, people are typically on a lot of medications, surgeries, and that health span shrinking. And so it's definitely scary. But yeah, your father was conventionally trained medical doctor, so he should be leading the way when it comes to health. And unfortunately, got sick at a young age.
Yeah, but he was just indoctrinated in the
Yeah.
mainstream medical model, which is of pharmaceuticals and surgeries. And I like to think about this, David, that when I was in my mother's womb, I'm listening to the conversations that are going on, and I was born into the medical matrix, into the medical paradigm, where I'm hearing again in utero my father talking about cardiology, and then I'm a baby and I'm hearing this. So it's like I was just indoctrinated it from day one. So I really understand all of those nuances and all of the methodologies of what they do. And of course, I would work in the biggest group in the state of Arizona as a hospital-based cardiologist for 10 years up until 2012. And I just saw all the failures in there. And to your point, the medical doctors, they buy into this whole thing too, and they don't last long either. So they take all the different pharmaceuticals, they take the statin drugs, they take the aspirin, take the blood pressure drugs, but at best, they are minimally effective. At worst, they kill people. And I think you can find arguments certainly on both sides. And I will tell you that ultimately, and tell your audience, because I know you know this as well as I do, that the pharmaceuticals are not the answer. God bless the men and women who work in emergency rooms and trauma centers, but for everything else, we got to go at things naturally. And I'm proud to, and thankful for you to, put out this message with me.
Yeah, and that's what you and your team do, natural and integrative cardiology. And what sort of lab testing? So if somebody comes in, they bring in labs, or if they want to run labs, what are some biomarkers that people can look at that really help them understand a little bit more about what's going on in their body and in particular their cardiovascular health?
Well, our methodology at Natural Heart Doctor is eat well, live well, think well, and then all the different components that would stem from that. But where I think we help a lot of people is in the test, don't guess methodology, because a lot of people believe they're living this healthy lifestyle, and that's great, but we need to trust but verify. So let's verify what their numbers are. And I know you're a big proponent of this, and you've written books on this as it relates to inflammation. Measuring the markers of inflammation and oxidative stress are the ultimate guide to kind of where you are status wise. It certainly is not total cholesterol or lipid ratios. That really has little to do with what we are trying to accomplish. Now, if you see abnormalities there in the lipids, or if you see abnormalities in the inflammation markers, you need to find out why. Now, the lipids react to inflammation. They're part of the anti-inflammatory mechanism of the body, amongst all the wonderful, beautiful things that LDL and HDLs do for us. But we need to figure out the source of why there is all this inflammation. The medical community, as you know, David, that they understand that inflammation is bad. Now, their hammer to that particular nail is a statin drug. It's an aspirin. It's an antihypertensive. It's other, cholesterol-related drugs. They're even coming up with other injectable, technologies for this, for this purpose. But it's all about trying to figure out the why, because when you have the why and you can reverse the why, that's where it becomes very special. Now, real quick, when you look at people with high blood pressure, of which 47% of adult Americans are labeled with hypertension, what we find is that there are really 4 groups of people. So let me try and break this down real quick. So the healthiest people are people with normal blood pressure, no pharma. The most unhealthy people are people with high blood pressure, still with high blood pressure, on pharma. Those people die the quickest. Now, the next category is kind of tied, where we have people with untreated hypertension, basically equivalent to the people with normal blood pressure because of pharmaceuticals. So what I'm trying to say is that if your blood pressure is normal and you're on pharma, don't think you're at the same risk as Dr. Jack Wolfson and Dr. David Jockers, because you're not. They have falsely lowered a number, and it does not lead to significant benefit by any stretch. And that's looking at the benefit, let alone the side effects. So ultimately, if we're looking for longevity, pharma and longevity, it's an oxymoron. They do not exist together in the same sentence.
Yeah, so that's really interesting to hear. So basically, if somebody has high blood pressure, they want to figure out why is their blood pressure high and address the root cause. You talked about think well, move well, eat well. We're going to go back to that. But just taking a pharmaceutical to get the blood pressure normal. Now the blood pressure is good. The cardiologist looks at it and says, okay, great. The drug is doing its job. Blood pressure is normal. Now he might think, he or she might think you're healthy, right? And that patient could walk out of the doctor's office thinking, okay, great, blood pressure is good, I'm healthy, but they never actually got to the root cause. And the research shows that they're still as at the same level of risk as when they had the blood pressure high without the medication.
There you go. And I think that's why, not that I think, I know that's one of the reasons why I say that high blood pressure drugs kill millions of people. Statin drugs kill millions of people. Now, why would I say that? Where's the evidence of that? Well, the evidence of that is this fact. If we take someone who we put on statin drugs, for example, and according to their data, and we could talk about, is their data real or is it not, or could money influence the creation of data? I think everybody knows that is certainly a possibility. But let's just take it on face value. The goal is not to reduce your risk of having a heart attack over the next year from 2% to 1.8%. The goal is to reduce it to 0%. The goal is not to reduce your chances of dying of cardiovascular disease over the next year from 1.3% to 1.2%. But yet these are the numbers that exist. And why would I say that we're killing millions of people? Because millions of people are still part of that percentage on pharma who are still dying. And they die because they think, and really because they've been told, just take this pharmaceutical and you'll be fine. You can eat whatever you want, live however you want, think however you want. None of that stuff matters anything. Take the drug. And that's why I would say that over the course of the 40 years that statin drugs have been around as the #1 revenue generating class of drugs of all time, that it has been responsible for millions of deaths.
Yeah, and there's so many reported side effects with statin drugs on top of what you're talking about, where people just kind of get this false assurance and never really change their lifestyle.